The lights were flickering again. This time, she wasn't alone. From the reflection of the darkened TV screen, a pale figure stood behind her, unmoving, its face blurred as if reality itself refused to describe it. Her phone buzzed on the table, an unknown number flashing the message, "Don't turn around." But she already had. 2 weeks earlier, Claire Matthews had moved into Eastwood Apartments. It wasn't glamorous. 10 stories of concrete, aging pipes, and the faint smell of mildew that clung to the hallways. But rent was cheap, and her work as an architect barely paid enough to allow choices. She told herself she'd only stay for a year. Her first night there was uneventful, except for the silence. Not the ordinary kind, but a silence that pressed against her ears, broken only by the creak of the elevator cables and the distant hum of something mechanical. Neighbours were peculiar. Mrs. Alden from 6B introduced herself with a too wide smile, her eyes strangely glassy. "We're glad you're here, dear," she said, gripping Claire's hand longer than necessary. Then there was Mr. Green from 8C, who left his apartment only after midnight, carrying plastic bags that never looked full. And across from her, 7A, officially unoccupied. Yet sometimes she heard the faint shuffle of feet inside, followed by a slow dragging sound. The landlord, Mr. Harker, had laughed when she asked, "7A? Empty. Always has been. You must be hearing the pipes." But the pipes didn't knock 3 times in the dead of night. On her 3rd evening, as Claire sat sketching designs in her notebook, the power flickered. The TV clicked on by itself, static, hissing, as if struggling to form a channel. She crossed the room, remote in hand, when the screen steadied. For the briefest second, she saw herself, standing in her apartment, exactly as she was now. But in the reflection, someone else stood behind her shoulder. When she turned, the room was empty. Claire tried to convince herself it was nothing. A trick of the light, a tired imagination. She had been working late hours, and the mind could invent shadows when it wanted to. Still, she unplugged the television that night and left every lamp in the apartment burning. Sleep never came easy. Every time she closed her eyes, she swore she could hear soft breathing that wasn't hers. By the end of the first week, she began noticing details about her neighbours that made her stomach tighten. On Wednesday night, returning from work, she passed the hallway window on the 7th floor. Through the glass, she saw her reflection. Except it wasn't moving with her. For one heartbeat, the reflection stared directly into her eyes before snapping back to normal. The following evening, she met Mr. Green. He was standing in the hallway, motionless, clutching his grocery bags. The light above him flickered, but he didn't blink. "You'll get used to it," he said suddenly, though she hadn't spoken. His voice was low, almost metallic, and without waiting for her reply, he slipped into his apartment and locked the door. Claire's unease grew. She began keeping her phone by her bed at night, screen glowing with the time. At exactly 3:07 a.m., every night without fail, a knock echoed from apartment 7A across the hall. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, like someone waiting to be let out. The first night she froze. The second, she crept closer to her door, pressing her ear against it. The knocking continued, and beneath it, a whisper, too faint to understand, but rhythmic, like words being repeated. On Friday, she finally asked Mrs. Alden about it in the laundry room. The older woman's smile was stiff, her hands folding towels with precise movements. 7A is empty, she said, not looking at Claire. But empty, Mrs. Alden repeated, firmer this time, her eyes glassy again, as if she were repeating a rehearsed line. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice. You shouldn't listen to it. That's how it notices you. Claire left without finishing her laundry. That night, she shoved a chair under her doorknob. But at 3:07, the knock still came, louder this time. And now, between the knocks, she was certain she heard her own name being whispered. Saturday evening, Claire returned late from work, hoping exhaustion would dull her nerves. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, casting sickly yellow circles on the floor. As she reached her door, she noticed something she had never seen before. Every apartment door on her floor had a thin piece of black tape stretched across the frame, as if sealing them shut. Every door except hers and 7A. Her stomach tightened. She reached out to touch the tape on 7B, but the door creaked open before her fingers made contact. Inside was nothing but darkness. No light switches worked. A cold wind seemed to spill from the void, carrying with it the faint smell of damp earth. Quickly, she pulled the door shut and backed away. That night, she didn't bother trying to sleep. At exactly 3:07, the knocks came again. 3 slow raps from 7A. She gripped her phone ready to call someone, anyone. But before she could, the screen lit up on its own. An unknown number flashed. The message read, "Don't answer the door." Her blood went cold. She hadn't told anyone about the knocks. The phone buzzed again. Another message. "They're watching you." And that was when she heard it. The unmistakable sound of her neighbour's doors opening one by one. Hinges squealing in unison, echoing down the corridor. She crept to her peephole. The hallway was filled with them. Mrs. Alden, Mr. Green, others she had only glimpsed in passing. They stood in front of their doors, facing 7A, silent and utterly still. Their eyes glimmered in the dim light, unfocused, like glass marbles. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a scream. Suddenly, the handle of 7A began to rattle. The knocks became pounding, desperate, shaking the frame. But none of the neighbours moved. They only turned their heads, slowly, mechanically, toward Claire's apartment. Her phone buzzed again. A final message appeared. "Don't let it in. If you do, you'll join us." The pounding stopped. Silence swallowed the hallway. One by one, the neighbours turned back, slipped into their apartments, and closed their doors without a sound. Claire sat on the floor until dawn, her heart hammering, waiting for the next knock. By Sunday, Claire was unravelling. She hadn't slept. Her sketches of work turned into chaotic scribbles of doorways and faceless figures. When she returned to the apartment that evening, the building felt heavier, as though the air itself thickened with each step. The elevator ride to the 7th floor was unusually long. The numbers above the door ticked upward, 4, 5, 6, then paused. The light flickered. For a moment, she swore the display read 13. Then the doors opened, and she stepped into a hallway she didn't recognize. It looked like her floor, but wrong. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, black mold creeping across the ceiling. Every door stood open, yawning into pitch-dark apartments. She could hear faint whispers, layered voices murmuring in tones that scraped against her ears. Her legs moved before her mind decided, carrying her back into the elevator. She slammed the button for 7. The doors closed, and when they opened again, her hallway looked normal. She She didn't mention it to anyone. Who could she tell? That night, she gathered her courage and pressed her ear against 7A's door. The wood was cold, unnaturally so. At first, nothing. Then a sudden rush of sound, like hundreds of voices screaming at once from the other side. She jerked back, heart hammering, nearly dropping her phone. The screen lit up. Another message. "You're close." Claire spun around. The hallway was empty, but she felt the undeniable sensation of being watched. Every apartment door seemed to breathe, their gaps leaking shadows that twisted along the floor like smoke. A sudden metallic groan echoed through the corridor. All at once, every light overhead went out, plunging the floor into darkness. The only glow came from her phone. Hands trembling, she raised it, the screen barely illuminating the nearest door. Mrs. Alden's. It was wide open. Inside, a silhouette waited, tall and rigid, with eyes like dull lanterns staring straight at her. Her phone buzzed again. "Don't look at them. Keep walking." But her legs refused to obey. And then, from behind her, the door of 7A creaked open for the very first time. The door of 7A yawned open, a blackness so deep it seemed to swallow the hallway light. Claire's chest tightened as a cold wind rushed past her, carrying with it the faint stench of soil and rot. The neighbors' doors opened again, one by one, hinges shrieking in unison. Figures emerged, Mrs. Alden, Mr. Green, and others she had barely noticed before, stepping into the corridor with identical glassy eyes. Her phone buzzed. A single line glowed on the screen. "Run!" She bolted. Her feet pounded the floor as she darted toward the elevator. The lights flickered violently overhead, bursting one after another. Behind her, she heard the shuffle of dozens of feet moving in perfect unison. When she slammed the elevator button, the doors shuddered but refused to close. The figures drew nearer, faces stretched into smiles too wide to be human. And then came the sound, the faint, deliberate tapping of footsteps from inside 7A. Slow, patient, as if something had finally been released. Claire stumbled back into her apartment, locking the door and shoving the chair beneath the knob. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. The screen lit up before she could touch it. An unknown number flashed across the display. The lights are flickering again. She froze. Every lamp in the apartment buzzed, sputtered, dimming one by one until only the darkened TV screen remained. Her breath caught in her throat. From the reflection of the black screen, she saw it, a pale figure standing directly behind her, its face blurred, shifting like static. She felt its presence, cold, overwhelming, as her phone vibrated violently on the table. The message glowed bright. "Don't turn around." But her body betrayed her. Slowly, irresistibly, her head turned. The scream that followed never left her lips. By morning, the apartment stood silent. The chair still blocked the door. The phone still lay on the table. The TV reflected only the empty room. And across the hall, the door of 7A was closed once more.